Thank you, Anay. Good evening, everybody. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming young entrepreneur Tarun Mahadevan, Mr. Tarun Mahadevan. He runs the Indian operations of the brand Cool Cream Milano. And some of the known brands that you would have heard in the city are like Chinatown. You would have visited there and then tasted the yummy food of theirs. Like Writers Cafe, Thapa, the Marina, Sira, they're all being owned by their group, right? But prior to this role, he was working for a private equity firm in London, and I think he enjoys that weather and in the Chennai weather as well, right? And then.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that introduction. So a bit about myself. I was born and brought up in Chennai. Went to Lady Andal. Higher education was abroad. My elder sister was in Singapore, so I refused to go there for my higher education. My mom said the US was too far, so I settled on the UK. I finished my undergrad in business administration at the University of Bath, and then worked with the bank on the sell side, BNY Mellon, and depository receipts. After that, I switched over to private equity, finished a couple of deals, and then I got the call from my parents. How many of you here working with family businesses? Okay, so are you already working with them, or are you looking to join them? Okay, good. So my parents asked me not when I was coming back to Chennai, but if I wanted to come back to Chennai. So long-term goal was to always come back and try to do something with them here. So then I did decide to come back and give it a shot. Anyways, it's been a year since I moved back, so a couple of people always ask me that question, how are you liking life back in Chennai? And I always refuse to answer that question because I still don't know, and I think it'll take me some time. So anyway, change is difficult, but there's one thing which is way harder than change, which is driving change. And I'm going to just share some of my experiences with all of you today for the past year that I've been here. Hopefully you have some key takeaways to learn from them. So when I joined, my designation in the company was Business Development Manager. But because of my last name in the company, people didn't really treat me like a manager. They always thought I was just a director, and every time I walked in the room, everybody would stand up, and it was very awkward. So, the rest of the team always looked at me for ideas, approvals, all of that stuff. And I said, look, you guys should contribute as well. And then I realized that, whatever I said, they would just agree to blindly. So then I said, okay, fine, let me have a test once. So we're sitting down. So we have a monthly review team with our innovation team. And we sit down and see what new products can we introduce to the customer, etc., across all the brands that we work with. So I just started by saying, hey guys, why don't we start serving podi-infused croissants? So firstly, before I continue, how many of you would buy podi-infused croissants? Any hands? Okay, thank God. Even I thought it was a stupid idea. So the response from the thing is, sir, surely, sir, we'll have it in stores next week. Monday onwards, we'll sell it, sir. What price do you want to sell it at? So I was like, okay, fine, this thing needs to change. So the solution was standardization. So within the group, I brought in uniforms, brought in ID cards, all of that stuff. I was wearing the same uniform. I still wear the same ID card, eat the same food that they do, sit at the same table that they do. And this definitely makes a difference because it shows them that you're not here to be commanding. You're here to listen to them and work with them, and they're not working for you, they're working with you. There's a very big difference between the two. Of course, there's always a double-edged sword. So the managing director, also my father, would at times absolutely take off at the team. You just walk in and we do something and he'd be absolutely in disagreement. So he'd actually take off completely in the office. So now the rest of the team had an advantage. Their window for being yelled at was only between 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. My window was 24/7 because I was living on the same roof as him. So once I was in the office till late, about 10:30, and it would have been a very long day at the office, a lot of screw-ups at work. So I called up my watchman at home. I said, most of you understand Tamil, I'm assuming, right? Okay, good. So I said, I have a room light here. Sir, illa sir, sir. So I said, okay, fine, maybe he's gone to sleep. So I got in my car and drove home. As soon as he opened the gate, my heart sank, not because the light was burning, because his car wasn't even in the driveway. So then I parked my car, got out, and he pulled up right behind me, and as usual, he was standing there, looked at me, and I got my absolute mouthful right in the driveway itself at about 11 o'clock in the night. So when I looked at my watchman, he said, sir, neenga light patti dhaan kettinga sir, ayya patti kekliya. So anyway, it's a different story. So the take-homes from these are that Try to understand any organization from the ground up. Start at the grassroots level. More than anything, you understand the needs of your group's employees. You understand what they want, and this in turn channels the needs of the organization instead. More importantly, you learn to cater to these needs in a mutually beneficial manner, both for you and for your employees, and this is essential for growth. Always be approachable. Don't forget where you started, and transparency and advocacy are centric cultures in our organization, which is why I think that an employee right from the utility or housekeeping level right up to a business manager level can approach the managing director directly, and this is why I think we command one of the highest retention rates in the industry. And the F&B industry, commanding high retention rates and battling attrition rates is extremely difficult. So yeah. Then obviously there's driving change, which is a challenge I briefly touched upon earlier. So after England, obviously I was exposed to Western work cultures and a lot of ideas. My stint at the private equity firm gave me a huge experience and opened a lot of doors to a lot of companies, strategies. I was working with a lot of smart people. So as soon as I came back to India and I looked at my group and the family's business, I said, this has to change, that has to change, and all of that stuff. And obviously, there's something I didn't anticipate, that business and business in India are two very, very different ball games. Okay, you have to understand, and you have to understand this, and it's imperative you understand it. The largest challenge I faced was access to data. So obviously, I come from a very heavy financial background. So a lot of my work was spent on Excel sheets and PowerPoint presentations and all of that. And to do those stuff, you need data. So a lot of data, I wasn't able to get the data I needed from the company's operations. So I used technology to a large extent to enhance and streamline processes and make operations more efficient. I invested heavily into the back-end infrastructure of the group, and ensured that I was able to track a product across the entire supply chain, right from the production house to the end consumer. But of course, again, driving change was a challenge. So during a surprise audit of one of the production plants, I saw all this hardware that I had bought them, top of the line, all lying in one corner. And at the other corner was the entire team sitting and making notes on that classmate notebook. So and so, this amount product gone to this person. So then I was absolutely fuming. I said, why aren't you guys using it? Sir, illa sir, nama IT phone panno sir. I said, okay. And he's like, what did you ask the IT guy? Sir, நம்ம computer எப்படி போடுறதுன்னு கேட்டோம் sir. அப்புறம் உங்க phone கீழே வச்சிட்டாங்க. So then I said, okay, fine. So this is a challenge I faced. And see, most people in the group have been with us for more than 15 years. And there's a quote from Forbes which recently said, for family businesses that are so rooted in tradition, the most difficult part of the decision is to actually implement a change that will become profitable and lead to a happier business. So I think that when you want to implement changes in such scenarios, there are two things you must consider. First thing is, the team will be affected by this change, so obviously take their inputs and work with them on driving this change. Don't just do it from the top down, do it from the bottom up. And the strategy for this change should come from them. And the reason for change is also important. The necessary training has to be communicated and conducted effectively. So adapt to the needs of the organization. This is really important. So I think that, so first off, how many of you here consider yourselves entrepreneurs? Can I see a raise of hands, please? Okay, good. And the rest, I'm assuming, are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. Fantastic. So the world is a competitive place, right? It's not as easy as it seems. And the probability of an entrepreneur being successful today is much lower than what the success rates entrepreneurs commanded back in the 1990s or mid-2000s. Success rates are often almost about 10%, if not 12% in mature markets. So it's very challenging. So at the end of the day, why should you become an entrepreneur? So according to most studies conducted worldwide, the reasons are that people want to chase their passion, or they want to be their own boss. Okay, and I think that what really should do it is just do it if you're happy. If it makes you happy, that's the most important thing, and I think that's the biggest bank balance you can have is happiness. Don't worry about your cash balance, but worry about your happiness quotient as well, because that's very, very important in today's world. So I often share this definition of entrepreneur. I hope you guys agree. An entrepreneur is a person who identifies a problem, or most oftenly creates a problem, and then devises a solution to said problem and makes money off of it. So you'll never know unless you try. Be wary. In the words of Warren Buffett, I always test waters with one leg, don't jump in with both. Make mistakes along the way. I remember once, it was a long day I had at the private equity firm, and it was about 12 a.m. and I needed to finish this valuation analysis for one of the companies. And I was really tired, so I made a mistake, clicked an extra 0 on the valuation and sent it to the entire investment committee. So the next day morning, I walked in and I got an absolute mouthful because I overbid it for a company by exactly 113 million pounds. The company was only worth about 8 or 10 million pounds, so just that extra 0. So that taught me a lot. Obviously, make mistakes. Mistakes are your biggest teachers. And in today's world, it's always about a valuation game. How valuable is your company and all of that stuff. I'm not in very much agreement with commanding a valuation because of these 3 words that my mentors taught me. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. All right, so please always focus on that. I'm going to end there and I'll open the floor for some questions. Thank you. Yeah, so see, for example, I work very closely with the innovation team. And the innovations team pure job objective is to introduce at least a minimum of 5 new products per brand on a monthly basis. All right. So one of the things that we were looking at was I don't know a lot, but a couple of years ago in Chennai there was a brand called Blue doing flavored water. All right, and we found that that died out a lot, and they suddenly didn't take off. So we thought, okay, fine, why don't we introduce our fine dine brands to some of those concepts again? And we started putting lemon pieces, strawberries, and all of that in water bottles, and then started giving it to them. And this was purely on a trial basis, and suddenly we saw that the complaints from those particular fine dine brands skyrocketed through the roof. And when we realized what was the complaints, they said, one of the guys actually called up my dad. Sir, unga paiyan enna pandranga theriyala sir. Thaniyala idu nastu pandranga sir. Saapidave mudiyala sir idu. Enna sir pandrathu? So then I said, okay, fine. Probably you should be more wary of the mindsets of consumers and understand their needs before we actually do it. So the innovation team also works closely with our research and analysis team. And they work together to ensure that the products offered are actually what the consumers want. And most of our groups work with open innovation, so anybody, right from anybody in this room, can send us a mail saying that, hey, why don't we try out this idea? And if the idea does really click, we give you a percentage of that particular product, as in the percentage revenue for that particular product. So these are all different changes that we're seeing. Of course, the uptake isn't as high as expected, but there are a couple of products that are on the shop today. For example, one of the housekeeping boys in Writers Cafe was once found playing with cookie dough and baking in the production unit. And as opposed to taking him to task, I told the guys, okay, try out his cookies, give him a good shot. So now actually all the cookies that we sell are actually made by him, and even though his base salary stays the same, 5 to 15% of the revenue generated from that particular cookie goes directly to his kiddie bank. And since he's relatively young, he's about 19 years old, so his money management skills aren't that great. So he sent it directly to his parents, and we built a small fund for him so that he can fund whatever he wants to do later on in life.
Okay, sorry. You said you brought in change to your company.
Yeah.
So how did you handle the old school traditional mentality where they did not want to change?
Yeah, so that's what I said. See, there are the two options you can deal with. Either you change the person or you change your change. And obviously, these are people. These people have been with the group for a long time. So as soon as I caused some changes in the supply chain or the way things were done, it's all about how you communicate this to them. I think that it's important that you go and tell them and sit with them one to one. And the most important thing is don't have your team do this. What I did was I went down there, I sat down with them. I said, look, what you're doing isn't wrong. I'm just saying there's a better way we can do it, and there's a more efficient way we can do it. See, these guys are used to working crazy hours, 13 hours, 14 hours, and when I'm trying to introduce something that's reducing their lead time and allowing them to go home at 5 o'clock, we should essentially portray it that way. So the way they perceive change and the way you portray that change is equally important. So if you're don't go in with a bullish attitude, go in with a calm attitude, understand their problem, and like I said earlier, try to inculcate this change by taking in their views as well. Often a lot of the change that we do in the organization is infused by these guys because a lot of them weren't heard, a lot of their problems weren't looked at. So I think that working with them, so the change should come from the bottom up, and it should be implemented from the top down, if you know what I mean. So essentially the feedback and the strategy should come from the lower levels, and it should be implemented at the top level so that it's followed throughout the company. So that's where you can tackle change, but it's a slow process. You have to be patient with it. You can't drive it. If not, if you don't mind me asking, are you a second generation entrepreneur or second generation family business or first generation? Okay, fine. Then driving change should be easy for you, man. You're sorted.
Hi. Now that you're into your family business, so at any point in time, suppose you had a bad day or something and you feel that, what am I doing? Should I just go back or something? Like, how do you pull back yourself? Like, go to office the next day?
Well, I can't go back because of Brexit, so I kind of just suck it up at the end of the day and just say, okay, I'm here now. So, but I think that what really motivates me to go back day by day, even though if I had a bad day, good day, whatever it is I knew I came here for a responsibility, and I am responsible today for under my belt alone. I'm responsible for feeding over 5,000 families. And I think that if I don't end up going there, then somebody else is going to make those decisions. See, when I was working in private equity, the fund I was working with targeted a lot of these family businesses that didn't have transitions or successors. So probably kids like you and me who didn't want to enter the family business. So parents didn't know what to do. They would find buyers often with these people. And the first thing that I was always instructed to do as soon as we took over a company was, my target was, my payout, in fact, when I was working in London was based on how much cost I can reduce. What is this cost reduction strategy? So, and at times it would be a very, what can I say, sympathetic process, because often the easiest way to do it is reduce your labor cost, which means firing people, which means letting go of them. Giving them severance packages and things like that. So I think that that's one of the main reasons why, having been on the other side of the table, I didn't want that to happen to most of my employees, because I've seen them grow up with me as well. So I think that at the end of the day, at times, yes, I do suck it up, and at times I have to understand that my title is just operations head, not just director, so I have to listen. So, and the thing is, most importantly, I have a very professional relationship with both my mama and dad on both sides of the business. At work, they're just my bosses, so we maintain a very professional relationship. And at home, at times they are my bosses, at times they are my parents. So yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead.
You had mentioned that you don't believe in valuations exactly, and especially in today's day and age, with the rising startups in terms of raising money and raising capital, all of it seems to be based on valuation. So I just want to know why exactly you don't believe in that concept, and what's the reason behind it?
See, it's not that I don't believe in it. In fact, I do ask a lot of companies that come to us for investment. I do a lot of valuation analysis till date. But the thing is, I think that the way you look at it and the approach being looked at many companies in India and especially abroad as well can be questionable. For example, take Swiggy, okay, local example, right? Last year they clocked about 350 crores in revenue. What was their bottom line? On 350 crores in loss. So what is the value add there? And see, for me personally, if you ask me, the purpose of any business, irrespective family business or corporate enterprises, to generate returns for shareholders, to generate shareholder wealth, right? So eventually what happens is, see, many economies have gone through this cycle, and the monetary world as such has gone through this valuation cycle, which led to the dot-com bubble, which led to the 2008 financial crisis, etc. For example, people say that Uber may never become profitable at all. And as soon as they say that, you'll see that share price tanks by about 8 to 10% on an average. So I think that that's where a lot of my bosses always put it in my brains that revenue is vanity. So people can boast, so I have a top line of about $1 billion. But profit is sanity. Are you making any money? And after all your other expenses like your interest, your taxation, your depreciation, amortization, what actual cash balance do you have at the bank? Because that is a general wealth, and that is the return you can give to your shareholder. Because see, I mean, I don't really know when Uber or if Uber will ever even pay out a dividend to their shareholders. And the same thing for Swiggy, so see, from a promoter standpoint, okay, fine, my business is valued at 1,500 crores, but irrespective of whether you're making money or not, I'll still get an exit, for example, which is why one of the reasons, one of the toughest things I found out when I came back to India is, India, a lot of companies are based on revenue multiples, not necessarily EBITDA multiples or not necessarily net profit multiples. A lot of them are based on revenue multiples, and this is usually done only in technology companies where the actual value add is in the brand. So that's in general a sense, but not necessarily that valuation is the wrong way. I'm just saying that there can be a lot more metrics to be looked at that aren't being looked at right now. Like profits, for example, like cash balances, and then I'd say look at your turnover per employee. Look at your leverage ratio, debt to equity ratio, how leveraged are your company. Accordingly, look at that. Your gearing ratio is also really important. And I think that your EBITDA to free cash flow conversion rate is very important. A lot of companies in India, especially some of the public listed ones that are in the news recently, their EBITDA to free cash flow conversion rate is in negative numbers, which means basically they're not converting any of their EBITDA generated into actual cash balance. So it's all just lost in debt or whatever it is. So there's a lot of those stuff. I suggest you read a book called The Outsiders by William N. Thorndike. It's a very good book, and I suggest you read it. I also suggest you read a book called Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight of Nike. So these two books are very good books, and they teach you how to build brand value as opposed to just valuation value. No problem.
Hi, my question is that how far do you think the technology would take to transform a particular industry like yours?
Oh, I think that the limits are endless. Today, for example, just take food technology, for example, Swiggy, Zomato, Uber Eats, all of these are tech guys, right? This is all technology. Today, Swiggy, online delivery as such commands about anywhere between 15 to 18% of my group's revenue, all right? This is just F&B group, that is. And I think that it's important that you use technology to your advantage and ensure that it later on does not become a disadvantage. For example, now most of our group companies and the brands, I sort of restrain them from offering heavy discounts on Swiggy, Zomato, Uber Eats, because then what happens is a large portion of the business becomes dependent on that. And now at a group level, our commission with Swiggy is about 16%. But later on, if it goes up to 25%, then am I actually making money on those products or I'm not sure. Which is why I think technology can really change the industry. It has changed the industry, POS systems, all of that. Everything's online today. And again, I'm saying be wary of that technology. And technology can be a boon, but it can also be a big pain. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tarun. I call upon...